So I just got back from what was probably my shortest international trip ever. I thought I was spending 3 days in Bangkok, but in reality, when I summed it all together, since we arrived in the afternoon and left in the afternoon, we basically stayed there for 48 hours. Now, we were there for such a very quick event, which was a press conference for something bigger actually. It's for the IMI show that will happen in March 2025 in Bangkok. It is going to be the first and obviously the biggest Southeast Asian trade show in the photography and videography industry. So it's called the IMI show, which stands for Imaging, Motion, and Innovation. And it's going to span basically everything inside the realm of photography, videography, and filmmaking. So that's going to happen in Bangkok in 2025. But yeah, so I was there for 48 hours. I wanted to get some shooting done. I did not get to shoot as much as I wanted to, but good thing I realized this would be the perfect 2-day trip to take Sony's latest camera, which is not that new, okay? I am a few months late, but it's Sony's latest camera. It's a Sony ZV-E10 Mark II. And in this video, let me talk to you about 3 different ways that I see this entry-level, supposedly, camera. So yes, the Sony ZV-E10 Mark II. And let me tell you first the backstory of what I'm gonna say in this video. We were in Bangkok. I was with Z Cheng, which is one of the biggest tech and photography YouTubers in Southeast Asia, or maybe in Asia in general. And we got to talking a lot about this camera because I first met him at the Kando trip, which was about a month and a half ago in Bali, Indonesia. And he was there to actually demonstrate the ZV-E10 Mark II, which at the time I have never touched. So while we were on the train, we were talking about that demo he did, which was, by the way, one of the best demonstrations at an event that I've seen in so long. And yes, we talked about all these features that we think are not being seen entirely by a lot of people who are making comments about this camera. And in that conversation, we basically realized that this is the kind of camera that different people see in different ways. And honestly, I think that that makes it even more valuable. Not more expensive, but more valuable, which means it's actually even better value for money. So first, let's talk about the specs. This is a 26 megapixel APS-C camera. Quite a jump from the 20 megapixel, if I'm not mistaken, from the ZV-E10 Mark II. Now, at the same time, it comes with a Bionz XR, not a Bionz X. So it also got a processor upgrade. In terms of video, it's now capable of 4K 60, coming from the 4K 30p that we had on the first version. And even more than that, it is now capable of doing internal 10-bit 422 recording. I have a lot of thoughts about that. I'm going to save that for a bit later. But yes, 10-bit 422 on the most entry-level camera of Sony at the time. Now, it also has 759 PDAF points with real-time IAF tracking, which is, at this point, we can say the standard or the staple or the bare minimum in the updated Sony cameras. Of course, it's interchangeable lens. It takes an E-mount and even full-frame E-mount, which is amazing. I have a lot to say about that too. It comes with a fully articulating screen with touchscreen. And one of the nice things about this is that when you turn it vertical, the user interface also turns vertical. And this is one of the first times we've seen the entire user interface to turn vertical, which is just, it's a sign of the times. Everyone is shooting vertical for short form content, so it just makes sense that the user interface will follow and give you a more comfortable way of seeing the screen. And you know why I think this camera isn't being talked about enough? Because the first reason I had for checking this camera out, and I'm actually already getting one, I'm just waiting for the white version. But the primary reason that it caught my eye is because it's the entry-level camera, but it takes in the NPF Z100 batteries. I also have the version 1 of the ZV-E10. I loved it for what it is, but I hated the fact that it was my only camera that wasn't using the batteries of my other cameras. So when I saw that this was taking in the NPF Z100, not only that it would mean longer battery life, much longer battery life, it's just going to be more convenient for me who has two other cameras with a bigger battery. So now, given all of that, I want to answer this question. Who was the ZV-E10 Mark II made for? Is it for beginners? Is it just for beginners? How can it be beneficial for many different kinds of creatives? And to answer that, I'm going to give at least 3 different perspectives of how you can see this camera, and if any of that applies to you, then that would mean this would be a good fit for you. It's that simple. So the first one, is it for a beginner photographer? Of course, obviously, absolutely. It is currently the most affordable Sony camera brand new in the market today. And of course, that will be very attractive to people who are starting out, people who want to be casual photographers, people who just want to have a camera just in case, or people who want to have a camera they can bring around when they're traveling. So it's for the casual beginners. It's also for the beginners who are foreseeing a lot of learning and a lot of growth in the coming months or the coming years. And I did say this about the ZV-E10 Mark I when it launched a couple of years ago, and I will say it again for this one with actually even more, I would say, evidence about that. Number one, it's interchangeable lens. It, of course, takes in E-mount and full frame E-mount. So it is compatible with any of the modern Sony lenses that, of course, follow the E-mount format. And if I'm not mistaken, we're at about 105 of them at this point. So I just like the thought of, imagine someone who just has this as a kit, the body and the new 16 to 50 millimeter version 2. And that's what I have for the first 3 months, 6 months, or maybe a year. And then they go to a store and they find, I don't know, something like maybe the new 85 GM2 or the 50 1.2 or whatever else. Even if those are very, I would say, specialized lenses, this can take them in, this can use it. And of course, you will have the ability to use the lens, which is, if I'm not mistaken, more than double the price of the body. And it might not be the most common scenario, but just the fact that you can take any Sony lens and use it on this entry-level, supposedly, camera, that also means that as a photographer who's starting out, as you progress, as you start knowing what lenses you want and what lenses you need, you can use them. So upgrading your body can be a little bit further down the line because you can still start upgrading your lenses or maybe adding onto your lenses and be able to use it with your ZV-E10 Mark II. At the same time, while it does have a pretty good microphone on it, it's one of the best onboard microphones I've seen in any camera. It also has the multi-interface shoe here on top, which means that you can use it with any of the speed lights that Sony has, or even the commander thing that I'm not ultimately familiar about. More than that, You can use it with any of the microphones that use the MI shoe, which means that you can use it even with the EC1B1M, which is one of the best mics that only use the multi-interface shoe and doesn't use of a 3.5mm cable. But of course, at the same time, it still has the other ports, just like the 3.5mm port. Of course, it takes in one SD card. It has a USB-C interface and is capable of USB-C charging and is also compatible with the Creators app. So, you know, any feature that you might not have use for in your first 2 weeks, first month using the ZV-E10, once you learn of it or learn how to use it down the line, it will be able to, of course, give you the option of using it. So it's, for me, it is the camera that can grow with you as a beginner photographer, because you can use all the lenses you want to try, you can use all the accessories you want to try, and yet it's still the same APS-C body that you are using. Now, the other way I'm seeing this is actually, I think, what Sony is focusing on, which is for content creators who are starting out. So I love the fact that for an entry-level camera, you also have so much room for growth in it as a content creator. It's a ZV camera. It's supposedly for content creation and vlogging. So it can be really good for a beginner photographer and at the same time, again, for a beginner content creator. For the same reasons. You can use different lenses on it. You can use different advanced microphones on it. And of course, the added features, just like what I said, the 10-bit 422. For example, you're starting out as a content creator, you're just, you know what, I'm gonna do video. And you probably started shooting at HD. And then after 6 months or a year, you realize that, hey, I actually want to start playing around with my colors, because apparently you can do so much with color grading. So you start shooting in log. It can do that. And then later on, you find out that you can actually bring out more colors with your videos because it can do 10-bit 422. And guess what? It can do that. You can go from the most basic way of shooting a video to, I would say, an intermediate or even almost advanced way of shooting a video, which is shooting in log and later on color grading and using 10-bit footage. You can do it. The supposed entry-level camera. And I really love that, because moving forward, it's not going to be such a hassle for someone to start getting lenses and getting upgrades. I feel like this is the camera that you can squeeze out the most in terms of usage before you would have to upgrade to a body. And, well, maybe the next step after this would be a full frame camera, maybe an A7 IV or a ZV-E1, something like that. But if you follow that route as a beginner content creator, beginner photographer, you then set it aside once it's time for bigger cameras, I feel like you would say that I really used the heck out of this. And you don't get that from most other cameras. But this one, I feel like it's the one that will kind of hold your hand until it's time to hand you over to the next camera body. And so that's why this is going to be my current, at the very least, recommendation for anyone starting out in content creation and in photography. Now, I just want to add, of course, what this doesn't have that some photographers might want to have would be an EVF. And if that's the case, then it might be better to get an A6700. It might not have all of the video features. It does have most of it though, but not all. But if you want the EVF, then the A6700 is another option for you. The third perspective that I want to give is also the specific reason why I'm getting one for myself. It is a really good second or maybe even third camera body. Now, why do I say that? Let me give some context. My main camera, well, my two main cameras are the Sony a7R5 and the Sony a7 IV. Two full-frame camera bodies with pretty much the same size and the same bulk, and I use them interchangeably. Most of the time, I would just have one of them whenever I go out. Now, one problem I have as a landscape photographer and as a content creator is that the kind of content I love doing the most, which is being on location and demonstrating what I do as a landscape photographer, it is the most logistically tasking kind of content for me. Why? Because I would have my a7R5. I would be shooting my stills with it. I would be shooting my landscape photography with it, right? But then for me to film the content, I would have to have the a7 IV as well. So I have to bring the two bodies. And this is okay when I'm shooting cityscapes from a rooftop. This is okay when I'm shooting landscapes from somewhere I drove to. But whenever I have to go hiking, whenever I go trek, I feel the weight of two camera bodies. Now the difference is when I have this, I can leave the other full frame body at home. And if I pair this with a small lens, I can even use it with a kit lens, it's going to be the size and the bulk of a small lens altogether. Just having this and it being able to pack a lot of the features that I would need to create content. And take note, number one is just the fact that I never have to think of autofocus and tracking my eyes ever again, because I know that any of my cameras can do that without fail. That's a huge thing. If the lighting and the colors get tricky, I can use the more advanced way of shooting the video, which is by using 10-bit and shooting in log. Although I do have to say I'm still mastering color grading. Not even mastering, I'm still getting used to color grading videos at this point. But it can do it. And so the third main way that I see this camera is that it's for anyone who wants a small camera alongside the other cameras that they may have. Yes, it is supposedly an entry-level camera, but it can adapt to you if you have bigger needs than normal. So yes, it's for beginner photographers, it's for beginner content creators, and it's for everyone else who's not a beginner. Who is the Sony ZV-E10 made for? Anyone who knows how to use the camera, or anyone who has the desire to learn how to use the camera, which is, in my opinion, really, really good for something that is the current most affordable one in the camera lineup. Yes, there we go. This is, again, the Sony ZV-E10 Mark II, a 26 megapixel APS-C that shoots 4K 60 and 10-bit 422 and can take in all of the lenses you want to use and all of the accessories you want to use. It's basically the camera that can grow with you, or the camera that can adjust to you if you are more than just a beginner. So yeah, of course, if you have any questions about the ZV-E10 Mark II, then you're free to leave them down below in the comment section. If you have anything to add to what I just said, then you're also free to leave them down below in the comment section. Of course, if you're new to the channel, my name is Nicco Valenzuela. I am a landscape photographer and a content creator, and I love talking about camera gear. And if you're into that, then do click that subscribe button and hit that notification bell. In any case, thanks for watching.